All right, we're heading out to the West Coast to talk to Joe Shasky. You can hear him on 95.7 The Game, the morning roast in San Francisco. Joe, thank you for making time, dude. When the Deebo trade came down, I thought Washington really took advantage of a Niners team in a little bit of transition. As somebody who covers this Niners team every day of your life, what do you make of the Deebo Samuel trade?
I was kind of devastated, quite frankly. And I think Niner fans are a little split on this one. Debo is the heart and soul of this team. From the day he was drafted, he was a second round pick the year that they got Nick Bosa, 2019. That team was awful. Jimmy Garoppolo had torn his ACL the year prior. He's coming back from a rehab. And Debo was the number one wide receiver on that team until they made the trade week 13, week 14 for Emmanuel Sanders. He was a beast that first year, had the second best rookie wide receiver season of all time, only second to Jerry Rice. So he was a factor. And in that Super Bowl, he was one of the best players on the field. Had
Sure.
like 70, 80 yards receiving, 50 plus yards running. He was an absolute monster. They fall short to the Kansas City Chiefs. He was their identity every single year. You know, they were finding a way to match up with the LA Rams, and him and Aaron Donald would go toe to toe in these primetime matchups, and Debo would be running fools over. He was the Kyle Shanahan offense. Tough, physical, versatile in the run game and in the pass game. I put his 2021 season up there with Jerry Rice, CMC, T.O., one of the greatest all-time individual seasons I've ever seen. And the last couple of years, he's been injured. The team has kind of dismantled around him. And I just think all parties, Debo, the Niners, they needed a change of scenery. And I was shocked that Shanahan moved him for a fifth round pick. And I know there's money that's attached to it. I still think he's a stud.
Okay. The 21 season's incredible. I mean, he went for almost 1,800 yards from scrimmage. He was just a monster. Now, he's only 2 years removed from a 1,100-yard season, double-digit touchdowns. Undoubtedly, he's been great. What is he now? Like the
Yeah.
fact that the Niners give him up for a fifth. Well, we heard these things about his weight, that he played overweight last season. What is Deebo now? Like, what is Washington getting the current version?
I think they're getting a hungry guy who wants to prove people wrong. Last year,
The
the
hungry might be
Wolves.
the problem.
Well, look, his weight's going to fluctuate. I'm going to tell you that right now. His
Yeah.
weight fluctuates. I've walked alongside of him. Not that I'm the largest human being in the world. This is a barrel-chested guy. He's not like CMC, Christian McCaffrey, very V-cut. Debo, since day one, even during his monster year, I mean, he is girthy. You know, he's a wide dude. That's how he takes the punishment. He blows through tackles. That's what he is known for. You get him on the edges. Jalen Ramsey, at his prime, he ran through him. I talked about Aaron Donald. Him and Aaron Donald had this feud going back and forth, and Debo always one-upped him. This last year, everyone on the Niners just had a down year outside of George Kittle, and I think Debo was in part of that. He came into camp in the best shape of his life. He was slim. Then he got pneumonia. And I lost my dad to pneumonia. Pneumonia is no joke. And I think a lot of the fans like, oh, pneumonia. He was just in the hospital for a couple of days. No. Clearly, he couldn't work out. His eating habits were obviously off, and he gained a ton of weight. And I never felt like the team or Debo got back on track. And then simultaneously, there was this moment where he returned 3 weeks later against Tampa Bay, and the kicker, who was awful all year, missed a bunch of kicks down at Tampa Bay in a tight game. Debo's having a good game, and he judo chops the kicker after getting into it with the long snapper over the kicker, shanking a couple of missed kicks. The whole team was frustrated, and it felt like that moment in time got aggregated online, and Debo going on the podcast saying it's no big deal. I think it rubbed a lot of 49er fans the wrong way. So to me, Kyle, the team, the fans, everyone was disgruntled. I think he needed a new change of scenery. To go back to the NFC Championship game just before that, he was dominant in that second half against Detroit. He helped will them back into the game. The Super Bowl was a dud. They went to him 12 different times, and he just came up short. He cannot beat sticky man coverage. He's not a route runner. He's a football player that you want to use as a chess piece, running through people's souls in the middle of the field.
Which is where Washington's going to use him. I mean, with a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, get to see a lot of zone. I think Deebo just eats zone up. They have the route runner in Terry McLaurin. They have the silky, pure wide receiver in Terry. I personally think this is really going to work out. Tell me if you agree with this. Adam Peters has to know Deebo well from their time in San Fran. Deebo, the locker room dude. Everybody sees the volatility, and then you're right. Like, obviously, the thing with the kicker became this national phenomenon. But in the locker room, my gut tells me guys love him, but maybe he rubs some the wrong way.
No, I think he's a leader. I think that's actually a misnomer. The fans is a different story. I think what ended up happening this year was without Ayuk and that silky right rounder to complement his style, he got kind of double teamed and phased out of games. He's a shallow cross, power slant guy, jet sweep guy. I think he's going to be great with Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's a great complement to what Jaden does behind the line of scrimmage with the ball fakes and just the way he plays football. I think it's really going to be a good complement opposite McLaurin. This last year, yeah, the leadership wasn't there. But in years past, he led this team out with the boombox. He was the first guy to step on that field, and everyone would get behind him and Big Trent Williams, who you guys obviously have familiarity with. Ricky Pearsall, who was a rookie, got shot in Union Square right down the street from me right before opening day, talked about how Deebo was one of his best friends on the team. Deebo was a leader to a guy like Jawan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne, who's now with New England, and other guys who are his contemporaries. I actually think you are getting a leader, and he's a playoff, battle-tested, what I call war daddy. I mean, this guy, you want to be in a foxhole with this guy. Last year, 2 years ago, in 2023, after losing in the NFC Championship game where Brock Purdy hurt his elbow, Deebo ran his mouth all offseason. Bradbury's weak. The Eagles are weak, this, that, and the other. It's like, hey, you're writing a big check. Well, he went into Philadelphia in the rain with Brock Purdy and lit them up for 160-plus yards from scrimmage, 3 monster touchdowns. I mean, breaking tackles, running away from people. When he's right, Deebo is a stud. And you want him in these cold upper northeast games that you guys are going to be playing in against a team I know he hates in Philadelphia.
I love that, man. I think all the sources I've talked to don't expect a renegotiation. Like, he's going to play on the current contract. Now, I won't be shocked if things go well and you get to October or something, and maybe you revisit it then and throw some guarantees and keep everybody happy. But going forward, do you think the contract would be an issue for Deebo, or do you think he knows that this is a fresh start and you prove it first?
I think that he's going to see this as a fresh start and an opportunity to prove himself. He's got a chip on his shoulder by nature. I mean, this is a guy who's small, had to go to the Senior Bowl. That's how the Niners found him, was they were coaching the Senior Bowl. And ever since day one, it's like, well, he's kind of not really your prototypical wide receiver. He's not really a running back. He's a football player. And he's one of those guys that I think could play in the elements, can play in any era. Yeah, he's not going to beat man coverage. That's not who he is, right? But what he is a guy that once the ball's in his hands, he is going to create havoc because there's so many guys in the league that just don't want to tackle. I mean, let's just call it what it is. And when the Eagles weren't very good in the middle of their defense with the middle linebackers, he ate them up. And they used him in a lot of different ways alongside Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield, not just as a runner, as a pass catcher, lining him up on linebackers, lining him up on safeties. He's faster than you think. He's way tougher than you think. Hands are a little, up and down. He had a couple of big drops this year. But I'll tell you this, in the big time games against Seattle in the playoffs, against the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs, at Green Bay in the playoffs, against Detroit, which I referenced earlier, against the Rams in LA in 2021, he is a battle-tested playoff performer. In December and in January, I want Deebo Samuel on my team.
There you have it. Couple other free agents coming in San Fran, and obviously I think guys are going to be leaving this year because they got to figure out the Purdy contract. Greenlaw and then Hargrave. What do you think those look like for a Washington defense that's got to get better?
Yeah. So I'll start with Greenlaw. Greg Greenlaw is one of the most underrated football players in the league. But he's coming off an Achilles injury. They missed his heart and soul. I mean, he was the heart and soul tone setter for the Niners. He separates people from the ball. His speed and his instincts are second to none. He played like 40 snaps for the Niners this year before he got hurt and went down again. I mean, we waited all year for his return, and he looked great for a half.
That was from the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. We waited all year. He came back, played one half of football, and was the best player on the field, like he was at the beginning of the Super Bowl, and then got hurt again with a calf cramp on the other side of the leg. I don't know where he's at physically, but I'll tell you this. If you bring him in on a one-year flyer and he plays for you, this guy is a stud. He's better than whatever numbers, whatever Madden rating you're going off of. Fred Warner and him as a tandem, instinctual, football players. I mean, these guys are two of the best. And I had Willis and Bowman with the Niners that I've watched my entire life. I mean, they're as good as those guys. The gold standard of off-ball linebackers can cover in space, can tackle the run, splits through linemen in space. He's an absolute stud, and he's a tone setter. He's an electric guy. Javon Hargrave, an overpaid defensive lineman from the Eagles that the Niners gave a boatload of money to, can rush the passer, but can't stuff the run, and I think gets pushed around at times. I'm not as high on Javon Hargrave. Got a great nickname, the Gravedigger, but he just never lived up to it. And I think they overpaid for him, and he got hurt the last couple of years and wasn't that impactful.
Yeah, I mean, going way back to when Philly or San Fran signed him, I thought it was a lot of money then. Joe, this has been fantastic, bro. I really appreciate it. And hit me up if you're ever in DC.
Absolutely. The guy that I'd be targeting if I was Washington on defense, Charvarious Ward. Charvarious Ward, he lost a daughter here in San Francisco. He's not going to come back. He doesn't want to live in California. He is an elite corner. When he's healthy, he was really good for the 49ers, can guard bigger receivers. He's a perfect guy to guard someone like A.J. Brown in division or C.D. Lamb, even though C.D. is a little more shifty. He did a great job on him in multiple playoff games. Charvarious is the free agent that I'd be targeting if I was Washington.
There you have it. Joe, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.